Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it once again. We had a 2-for today. We had Sharifa Yateem earlier today, so I hope you go back and check that LinkedIn Live out or YouTube or Facebook group, wherever where you are, and however you listen to that. We had a great conversation on those in the population of Special Olympics, cognitive disabilities, and so we were talking about autism spectrum. It was fascinating conversation. So go back and look at that one. And we had a lot of kind of general things that we can actually learn from that as well. But you are once again on Hurdlers of Adversity, Inspirers and Maximizers of Pivotal Moments. And on this show today, we have an amazing guest. You're not going to want to miss this show. So as you get on and you jump on board for this conversation today, please begin to share this with your teams, your members, whoever that's out there. We want to be sharing this all over the place. Make sure you're commenting in our chat box over here because we want to hear your voice. We'll also put you up on the screen. Make sure that your voice is being heard. Make sure your questions are being answered for the conversation that we are having today. So come on in, come on in, come on in. This is a great time to come on into the living room. Join the living room, go play the piano, sit on the couch, get your cup of joe. It's all good. Gather the family around. It is a beautiful day here. I'm out in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Another great day out here. We've been having conversations all day long, and I just can't wait to have this conversation with each and every one of you. So I know that most of you that are in right now, right? Some of you are on the East Coast, so you're probably pretty much wrapping up your day. Some of Central America, and what I mean, kind of Central Time Zone of America. So you're probably getting ready to, okay, I got one more hour to push through. And then I'm in Mountain Time, so I got a couple more hours to go. If you are on Pacific, sorry, you got 3. Sorry, can't help you out. You got to just keep on going. Move to the East Coast if you want to be done. So I know that you are winding your day down. So listen, we're streaming on 3 different channels, right? We have LinkedIn Live, and I'm so thankful for LinkedIn Live for operating and giving us this platform to have these amazing conversations. We're also streaming on YouTube and to Facebook, the Facebook group. If you want to join the Facebook group, it's a private group that we have. We're talking about amputating fears. How do we get over those fears, overcome the fears that we have in our lives? So the group name is facebook.com/groups with an S /amputate fear. And then you go in that group and we will allow you to come on in there. Whoop suey. Yes, Stacy Woolley, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you being there. Invite your friends, Stacy. I appreciate it. Thank you. So she got woohoo, John. Look at that. So, I'm gonna put you up there, Stacy. Yeah. So thank you, Stacy, for jumping in, and I'm so grateful that you are there. Hope you're doing well and your family is safe during this environment. So just real quickly, if you don't know who I am, I always start off this way for those that might be new who don't know who I am. You'll see on the bottom, global influencer. I used to call myself a motivational speaker, and I said, well, I don't really motivate. That's a part of it. And then I said, oh, I'm an inspirational speaker. I thought, well, inspire because inspiration is a catalyst to motivation. And then everybody started saying, well, you really influenced my decision. So I just started saying I'm an influencer. So we'll see what growth model is after that. But on May 17th, 1994, I was one of the world's fastest hurdlers, and I was on my way to the Olympic Games in the 400-meter hurdles. I had just been recommended to officer candidate school by a group of officers to the United States Army. So my career path was on track. I love the military, wanted to be a lifer in the military, and I just had a great experience. Went to Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and I was going to do, the proverbial, I'm going to do 20 years as an officer, get out and work the same job for one of those big contracting companies and do another 20 and be out again. So have a double retirement. But everything changed at 5:30 when I went across the hurdle. I landed wrong, dislocated my left knee, severed the artery behind the kneecap, and then 7 days later chose to become an amputee. So what do you do in that moment when life has changed? A lot of us have come full stop too. And when those of us who are amputees or life has changed with one wrong step abruptly, COVID-19 hit us that way. We had an abrupt stop. We weren't anticipating it. and our life had to change over. So that's what I began helping people with. But I had to get a new normal mindset, which my wife Alice gave to me when I was struggling with my identity of who I was in that moment. And so she just said, we're going to get through this together, John. This is just our new normal. And that really pushed me, and it helped me understand that the new normal is not a destination. The new normal really is only a plateau by which we grow. So the ceiling becomes the floor, and we can elevate from that floor again for the next day. And the Olympic motto is Citius Altius Fortius, swifter, higher, stronger. Those words are not written in the superlative of the word. It's not the highest form of the word. They're written with the mindset that we can have with that ER stem ending, we can have our best performance today and be even better tomorrow. So that's what I began pushing. And thank you, Marvin. Need a new story? Yes, absolutely. So we'll put that up there too. Thanks. Appreciate that, Marvin. Yeah, need a new story for sure. And so I began training for physical therapy. My physical therapist said start swimming, and I did. And I made 27 months later the Paralympic swim team. Who knew there was a parallel path to that? And from there, I saw athletes running on the track with artificial legs. I had a leg made for running. 4 short years later, won the silver medal in Sydney, Australia, becoming one of only 2 athletes in the world at that time to jump over 17 and a half feet without a leg or a knee. So I tell you all that to say the framework of our conversation around hurdling adversity, amputating our fear, embracing a new normal mindset really stems from a very personal level story, but it's general enough that we all have something that we have to push forward in. Do we really overcome the challenges that are in our life, or do we learn from them and actually create a new normal existence from it? We talk about those things from individuals that I esteem very high in my life. Always surround yourself with people smarter than you, and we definitely have one of those on the line right now. So let's get going on this conversation, but I want to know where you're scoping in from, where you're streaming in from, where you're YouTubing in from in the chat box. So just put it in there. Let me know where you're going, where you're coming in from, so that we can shout you out and share with the viewers where everybody is listening from. So I know that I think LinkedIn had a little problem last time with the chat function and features. So I'm not sure if that's happening right now or not. I know that last week when I looked at the chat afterwards, there were a lot of people who chat. I didn't see their chat. So hopefully that's going on. That's not going on today. But let me get ready to introduce you to an amazing man, an amazing individual who I just think the world of. When I was starting out my career, kind of in the disability community, I didn't really understand it. And as I was trying to understand, I began surrounding myself with people that I knew were just way smarter than I. And I won this award in 2007 called the Paul G. Hearn Emerging Leadership Award. Hey, how you doing, Stacy from Colorado Springs? We got to shout you out there. Thank you so much for joining in. I think I did something else. I tried to put you out there, but I didn't see it. Okay, wherever you went to. I'm not sure where you went. There she is, Colorado Springs in the house. So I didn't know exactly, what to do. And I didn't know what this award was all about, or this entire disability community, and what's this all about. And it was for the Paralympic military sport program that I was building out, and they gave me this award as an honor as an emerging leader. And I started understanding a little bit more about the disability community. Some of my earlier mentors, Ann Cody, for one, I got to shout her out, said, you need to read the book No Pity by Joseph Shapiro, then come back and talk to me. So that was my introduction. And that was one of the best advice I've ever been given. But this gentleman I'm going to introduce you to was also instrumental at that time and gave me some really great grounding of understanding. We served on some boards together with the State Department, and just fell in love with his character, him as a human, his family, just an amazing individual. So I want to begin by just sharing with you, can you imagine growing up without arms or legs? Then losing your mother to cancer? How would you have handled that life? Well, for our guest, he was raised by his father, fitted with prosthetics, and encouraged to overcome the challenges that befell him. He became so independent with his quick mind, went on to graduate from Georgetown University, and then earn a law degree from Washburn School of Law. Washburn saw how smart he is and awarded him with an honorary doctorate of law in 2003. So if you were thinking about what was me, guess again, folks. Rock Doc, we are here locked and loaded with our guest today. To me, he's a mentor, a friend, a confidant, a guide. And as I work in the space of helping people and businesses and companies see the value of hiring, retaining, and promoting people with disabilities in the workplace, he has been a phenomenal guide. So without further ado, let's introduce you to the attorney, Esquire, John D. Kemp.
Hi, John.
Doing so well today.
How are you?
So thank you for joining me on this great conversation I know we're going to have today. You know, this is the is it 75 years for Employment Awareness Month? How many years? It's been a little while, and I think people like get it confused around the American with Disabilities Act, but right. this month has been around for quite a long time. So kind of jumping into the conversation, why is this month so important?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. You are a dear friend, and I consider you a mentor as well. So, my friend, I admire you, and I'm so proud to see you doing this and bringing people to America and to the world. So thank you very much. You're an awesome guy. And I must say that we have been working on this issue of, you and I have been working on this issue of employment and trying to change attitudes and feelings and perceptions for years. And we're not making a lot of progress, even though it's not us, it's a lot of other people who just can't quite get their hands and their minds and their arms around the fact that people with disabilities, with a variety of disabilities, could actually be working in competitive employment. So yes, we should take October as a month to celebrate the employment of people with disabilities, but at the same time, we've got to really get down to the core issue of what's really the problem here. If we haven't made a lot of progress since the ADA was passed 30 years ago, why are we still having a lot of problems? And I think there's a lot of issues that go into it, a lot of doubt, a lot of fear, a lot of concern.
I agree. From multiple angles of what you're saying, and I'm kind of writing some notes down here. You know, what's the problem? And that's what I probably should have titled this. What's the problem? What is your problem? You often shared that the road to your first full-time job following college was not an easy one. So based on your experience, what can those currently seeking employment really do or think about to increase their employment opportunities, especially in this age of COVID, right, where we're all working from home? And how can they best showcase the skills and talents that they have and bring to the workplace?
Well, a lot of people think that they might be entitled to something, and they're not entitled to anything. I think you have to make yourself relevant today. I think you have to really look at what's important to the employer. What does the employer want and need, and how do I present myself as a qualified individual with a disability? And sometimes the fact that you have a disability has no bearing whatsoever on what you're going to do. So that doesn't even enter into the discussion until possibly you need an accommodation of some kind. Yeah. Otherwise, disability isn't all that terribly important. It's making yourself relevant, having the self-confidence, making sure that you're prepared and well prepared for a position that you're seeking. And then when you get there, work harder than anybody else and be the very best you can be. There's a lot that goes on, and we all know that we're sort of being watched as we go into the workplace. I had a particularly hard time coming out of law school finding a job, and I thought, I get a law degree, now I should be able to get a pretty good job. And I did not get a good job. I didn't get asked at all for quite a while. And fortunately, my dad, who worked for the federal government, kind of leaned on a friend who said, if you have any openings in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, would you think about including John in the pool? So I got hired by US EPA and started out of law school at US EPA in Region 7 in Kansas City. And when I was there, I realized that I had to do my job really well, but I was also being watched by other people. And I knew that I was on stage. I was gonna.
Mm.
We're wondering.
Mm.
They're curious about how I do things. They want to know if I'm a real human being. Do I have feelings? Do I? So I learned the social skills necessary to wrap around the professional skills that I had, and I was an enforcement attorney. So I was like bringing the hammer to a lot of polluters and people that were basically walking on the edge of violating federal laws, and I would have to bring charges against them. But my teammates, my colleagues, were the ones that I knew that I was also demonstrating what I could do for.
What is that? I mean, what does that feel like when you? I mean, you just said that. Are you human? The people were asking that question. I mean, I mean, I know you're a quadruple amputee, but obviously you're human. So why even the question? Why do you think that's going on in their heads?
There's so much doubt about what people with disabilities can do that I basically say I don't disclose until it's absolutely necessary.
Hmm.
In an interview today, it's probably different, and that a lot of employers want to know if you're going to be considered as part of an applicant pool. But I would not disclose until I would get close enough to be in an applicant pool, and that's kind of an older school approach.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's sort of like in your face. I'm going to tell you I have a disability, and now it's on you, employer, to treat me as fairly as you possibly can. And I think today there's been a tremendous change, and I do think that employers today are very cautious and careful about how they react and deal with people with a variety of characteristics, and they really are, and I have learned a lot about it. But underlying all of this is still this sort of underlying feeling of uncertainty,
Yep.
a little bit of doubt. We used to be expected to be able to, we had to perform all these jobs, you'd be hired for this, but you'd have to be able to help somebody carry some books somewhere, or drive over and run an errand for somebody. And sometimes that's not possible for some of us. So the ability to do all things is, all other things as assigned, that last line in a job description, ability to do all other things as assigned. That many times excluded a lot of people. But for the most part, it's gotten a lot better today. But I gotta say that with the discovery of autism and the elevation of autism to now have such a high representation in our population, and people not understanding what these conditions are and what the assets that people have with autism and what characteristics they bring to the workforce. I think that we're starting hopefully to convert people to start seeing the assets that people have and not
Mm-hmm.
focus on the deficits or disabilities.
We were talking with two thoughts. We were talking with Sharifa Yatim a little earlier today. She's autism expert over in the United Arab Emirates, and my wife and I fortunately had a great visit on behalf of our State Department to the U.S. State Department to talk to a lot of the Emirati over in the UAE, and so it's a fascinating woman and the work, just passionate about this work. I have to believe that, as people are beginning to understand or try to understand a little bit more, that there is a way forward. But I also see that there's a limiting factor, something that's holding people back from actually jumping full in the water, right? To look at you. I love how you frame it as people as assets that, they're going to bring something to my team that I just don't have. And the final thought around this, kind of make the triangle here, is that you mentioned, what you were going through and being excluded by that line, being able to have an ability to do all other duties as assigned, versus kind of the person that's going in now, maybe with a little bit more, I wouldn't say confidence, but they know what skills they bring, and they're going to use the law or use whatever they have to make sure they get the best opportunity. And so that's a different mindset, right? That's the mindset of what I call the resolve. I am resolved. I'm resolute in who I am, and you're not going to dictate to me anything. I'm going to dictate to you what that is. And so that's taking the power. when you look at that whole kind of structure, and kind of going back to our first question on how we show up in the work environment, tell us a little bit about what you see today with COVID happening that will help employers see the value of people with disabilities in the workplace.
I think COVID is actually a good example of the ability of people with disabilities to adapt. If we haven't learned all of that in our lives, and those of us who have lived with disabilities for so long, I must tell you that we are probably the best workaround, problem-solving group of people that ever lived. And if you want a great problem solver and someone who will get something done, hire a person with a disability who's lived with their disability for a while. Sometimes disability is very new and people are still adjusting to how they're going to go through their life. But for the most part, we are really good problem solvers.
Yeah.
This whole thing about working from home and how are we going to deal with this and how are we going to adjust and how's our mental health? We're probably further ahead and better capable of adjusting to these kinds of twists and turns than a lot of other people, just because we have lived with uncertainty and difficulty and adversity in our lives, and we're good at this stuff. So,
I love how you said that, right? Because I look at workers or the workforce, and maybe, I'm not sure, I'm going to say HR. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but HR, and usually they're given the task to begin the hiring processes or put the systems in place. I really believe they need to be with the executive level, because they need to be in that framework so that they can know what the company actually needs from the top. And often they're the problem, like you said, the problem solvers, or they get, the stuff rolls downhill and they got to fix everything. But when we're talking about this, I liken it to the problem solvers of people with disabilities. Are saying, you know what, if I can just work from home, that'd be cool, that'd be fine, and I can just do my work from there. But the workforce is saying, no, you can't do that. Leaders saying, we can't work from home. We need you in the office. We need to accommodate you in the office. We need the teamwork. We need the camaraderie.
uh-huh.
And now we're all working from home.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that's a very amazing point. The other point I want to bring out is that we talked a little bit about autism spectrum, but now I want to kind of get into maybe a little bit of muscular dystrophy and some of those things. And you we talked about the strength that a person would have and the power that they have in having their own voice back, and somebody that never lost their voice, being a powerful fighter, and then having MS later on in his life was Muhammad Ali. And you have something in your house that I want you to share. How in the world did you get those shorts back there, man? What is that? What are those?
People think I'm drying out my underwear on the wall in various virtual meetings, and it gives me the opportunity to explain. Those are really Muhammad Ali's trunks from a boxing match, and he signed them. And he signed them when he had his physical condition.
Yeah.
And my dad lived with that condition as well. And so when he writes very tightly and very small, it means so much to me that and I got to meet Muhammad Ali one time. And you talk about people who glow, you've been around people who have auras, and they're just like, my gosh, you just cannot believe you're in the presence of such greatness. And he was so powerful. Just his presence was so powerful. And he's just been a hero to me ever since he had the courage to stand up and not go into the draft.
Right,
and give up 3 years of his most productive time of his life to take a stand that was definitely going to hurt him economically. But he turned out to be just an incredible leader and a hero to so many people. And if I pick out anybody in my life besides my dad, who was my real hero, you got Bob Dole and you got Muhammad Ali. And these are two people that I just admire so much. And my dad, of course, who, as you mentioned early on, took us all and built us up, got us out the door, got us into life in a big, big way. But Muhammad Ali and Bob Dole, two incredible people. And now I'm looking at another one right now, my buddy, John Register.
Well, I thank you for that. But I mean, the what you do is just so incredible. And I just want to kind of just shout you out. So if you're enjoying this conversation with John D. Kemp, please shout him out in the chat box right now, at John Kemp. Just put that right in there and say, he met Muhammad Ali. Just put that in the chat right there. I can't believe he met Muhammad Ali. He met the greatest fighter. I won't tell you. And, a lot of times later on, we acquire disabilities. And if, we always say that, I think Judy Heumann, who I interviewed last week, she always says about, what is it? You're temporarily able, you're not able-bodied, you're temporarily able-bodied because you're probably going to join the club one day.
Exactly.
So I've always snagged that one. I took that one real close to heart. In fact, I want to ask, I'm going to get to that question. I'll go do it now, and then I want to come back and ask you about sports in your life. One of the things she was on the Trevor Noah show. Judy was on the Trevor Noah show, right? And so she's talking about her book. And then Trevor says that, for us that are able-bodied, and that, that just struck a nerve with her. So she started ticking. And and then she says, well, Trevor, you're not able-bodied, you're temporarily able. And then Trevor comes back and says, what are you threatening me? and it paused her, because I think that's what it is, right? It's a fear of becoming part of the crew, because I don't understand. Right. I don't know what it is. Right. So I just want your thoughts on that.
Well, I think a lot of people think that there's something less, and we live these poor and diminished lives, and that they're kind of pitiful, and people don't have good spouses, and they don't have children, and they don't have beautiful living rooms like you have, and we're just all poor. Well, yeah, a lot of us are poor because we aren't able to get jobs and do that. Right, but there are a lot of people with disabilities who aren't out and proud about their disabilities, and these are the CEOs who have had heart attacks and people who have mental health challenges throughout their life. 1 out of every 4 workers in the United States has had a mental health challenge for at least 30 days at some point in their life. So everybody lives with this, but the perception is there's something sad and pitiful about having a disability. It's not that way. You and I are married to beautiful people. We have beautiful wives, and inside out, they are just incredible people, and we admire them. And we live good lives. I run an organization here on Long Island in New York that has 400 employees, 3 corporations. I got a school for kids who are medically fragile, who I'm holding my breath every day as to their well-being and their safety with regard to COVID. We have taken on immense commitments to protecting not only their safety and safety of other program participants, but also 400 employees. So we have good lives, and we also have lots of responsibility to go with them. And I always like, bring it on. I welcome these challenges, just like you as an athlete who had your life turned upside down and came back to be an extraordinary hero to a lot of people. So we like this. Some of us thrive on it.
I was gonna say, I was laughing because I say, well, don't take the kids to the White House, that's for sure. Don't take them on a trip. No field trips there right now.
Touche, man. That's really good. That's really good.
So that was bad. Okay, I'm be good. So I want to go back to kind of the sports, right? Because your dad really helped you through sport, getting you engaged and involved. What, A, how difficult was that? B, what did it teach you? And then C, what do you still access from that time period, that you use in your life today?
John, I grew up thinking I was going to be a professional baseball player. And I knew I had a disability. I knew I was born without arms or legs. And my dad would play catch with me out in front of our home in Bismarck, North Dakota, where there's a very small window of good weather. And we would play catch, and I was terrible. But in my mind, I was going to get good enough with enough practice, because my dad said, if you practice enough at something, you'll get good at it. So he would play catch with me all evening. On weekends, I was going to be a baseball player. I loved baseball. I knew everything about it. I knew all the players. And the reality was, when I got to about 10, 11, 12, kids were getting much better, much faster. They could do a lot of things. I have artificial legs and artificial arms. And it was sort of an awakening that my dad would never tell me this is going to happen. You're going to come to this point in your life and you're not going to be able to do it. He let natural selection happen, basically, that kids would choose. You play a game where you choose sides. And I was always the last person chosen. And I kind of got the hint, like maybe I'm not that good and I'm not that fast. And they're going to put me in right field, which is the worst place to play baseball. Or you're going to be rover behind second base as the 10th person. But you just kind of get this feeling that, okay, this isn't working out. So I'm talking to my dad and he's kind of saying, well, maybe you've got to use other assets. And maybe you got to use your mind. Maybe you've got to apply yourself in other ways. And I started thinking about it. And so, but I love sports so much, John, and I know how much you love sports, but I love sports so much that in high school, I was the student manager and I got to hang with the guys. I was responsible for getting the oranges before the game so they could have them at halftime. And I bring the basketballs and the medicine kit. And my job was to be there, but I shot baskets all the time on the sidelines. And I got a letter jacket. In fact, I have a letter jacket from my high school days with 7 letters on it because I was the student manager for 7 teams over 3 years. So I loved the whole notion of.
I just thought you were going to say you were in high school for 7 years, and so you got.
I got stuck. And then I got going again.
You took my pathway.
It could have happened, though. Believe me, it could have happened. But anyway, I love teamwork. I love teams, and I think that's what management is really creating teams and getting your teams to be able to produce a positive outcome and develop the camaraderie and all the respect and tolerance and appreciation for differences. And everybody has a different view of how to get a job done. And I think that's what sports taught me, is that everybody approaches things differently, physically and mentally, very differently. So I love sports.
And what's it, as the mental game, right? So you become an attorney and you started some amazing organization. We're going to get into that in a second here, but is that what it was? Was it the tenacity and just the stick-to-itiveness and always find a different path? Is that kind of what helps you today?
I think so. I think so. I think my dad really instilled in all 3 of us kids, and I'm the only one with a disability, but he just said, you got to figure this out. You've got to figure out how to get around this problem. I'm not going to always be there for you to help you through a situation. And I know we've gotten ourselves in certain situations I have in my life physically where I realize I can't believe I'm stuck here. And I need someone to help me do something somehow, some way. And you just have to apply yourself, and you have to have the courage to ask other people for assistance. That's a hard thing for a lot of people, by the way, to do, and especially if you don't have a disability, it's really hard to ask somebody, would you help me do something? And we learned how to do that, but not let people take control over us because they've offered and given assistance to us. We owe them a thank you, an appropriate social response, but we do not let people take control of us. And you wonder why wheelchairs now don't have handles on the back at the top, only in the hospital, but they took those off for consumers who needed wheelchairs, is because people would push them into places that they didn't want to go.
Right.
And you lose control over your life. So they're kind of a long way around to your answer, but we want control and we want dignity in our lives, and that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, independence. I mean, we don't want to be dependent on anybody. So all these stories you say, and it just reminds me of the time I learned. Some are really, for me, it was absolutely humiliating things. Right in the hospital, I couldn't do for myself anything. Let alone I couldn't wipe my own backside. And so you have people that are coming in, and that is a spot where he's like, oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
And that, having that functionality back, I don't want someone to do for me. But if you don't learn that early on, then when you become more seasoned in life and you're slowing down a little bit, you think you can operate in the way you used to, but you can't. You're more subject to falls. You're breaking things because of the fall. You have taken longer time to recover from those things. And now you begin to understand, what somebody else may have experienced way back earlier in their lifetime. And so that really gets us to, kind of bringing the conversation back around to the ADA, what's changed and what hasn't. Is we're celebrating right now the 30th anniversary of the ADA passing in July. And it's a great milestone. As a member and longtime advocate for disability community, I mean, you started the American Association for People with Disabilities, and the Viscardi Center, and you're president of that right now. And I think even you did something with Amputee Coalition, or something. You and Peter Thomas had a law practice out in DC. Right. So with that, what's progressed, and where are we still stagnant?
Well, we've already talked about the employment area where we're really still hung up. We've only had a 1% gain in the percentage of people with disabilities who are employed, and that's just pathetic. 30 years later, what civil rights group would ever tolerate that slow of a growth? But somehow, because we get Social Security and we get other kinds of benefits, and we're afraid Daddy's not going to give us our allowance, and we end up taking on this childlike attitude when we should be just raising holy heck with the federal government and with our funders who really give us the means. So the employment stuff is still a critical issue. But I must say that when the ADA was passed in 1990, nobody anticipated the internet. Nobody had a thought at all. And now we're seeing that there are a number of lawsuits that have been filed over the last 10 to 15 years on the inaccessibility of websites and all of the digital media that's out there. We are now seeing that people with disabilities are entitled to, as a civil right, access to the internet and the World Wide Web. And they're entitled to effective communication. And so it's using the broad language of the ADA and the ADA Amendments Act to say that that's covered. But a new law this week was introduced as a bill in Congress that says that online accessibility is explicitly covered under the non-discrimination requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It has no hope of going anywhere this session of Congress, but it's a setup for the next session of Congress next year. And by God, it's gonna need to be passed, because we still have this gray area where people think, I'm gonna build this website and I don't have to make it accessible. I don't have to have it read left to right. I can put anything in there I want. I can put images without any alt text in there. So there are a lot of things that need to be done, and developers, web developers, really need to learn that skill now so that they're including these things. So that's the gap that I see that is the biggest gap, is the internet and the World Wide Web is just not fully accessible. All the communication technologies that exist are not fully accessible to a lot of people, and yet we shop, we may even vote someday online. But just this whole experience of the socialization, what we're doing right this very minute is exactly what I'm talking about. It has to be, these systems have to be accessible, and it's so easy to make them accessible. So anyway, Viscardi's got a digital accessibility service that we do provide, and we know that there's a need out there for it.
Yeah, I love those two things. So employment, and then website for the accessibility features of opportunities, because without the opportunities, you can't really move forward. You're still, I think it was David Grevenberg, I was talking to him too. He's a CEO of the Commonwealth Games, and we were talking about this topic, and I said, one of my phrases is, the next day the ceiling has to become the floor, and then we move out on that. So we're really talking around Black Lives Matter and in that context. And he says, yeah, that works only if you're in the room. I said, oh my gosh, that's good. So we have to get in the room.
That's right.
Where decisions are being made, or at least we have a voice at the table. If we're not even in the room, then we can't even cause impact of those things to actually happen. With I see a lot around the world still, people with disabilities are kind of treated as taboo. It was a hard thing to find when I was building out the Paralympic military sport program. One of my biggest goal was really to take a page out of the CISM book, World Military Championships, which is, they have non-NATO countries competing on the battlefield of sport. So countries that could have fought wars against each other are now competing in sport and trying to, make diplomacy in that aspect. And so I wanted to kind of do the same thing similarly with those that may have injured an American and Americans that have injured another country, and compete on the battlefield of sport through like diplomatic measures. But what I ran into, and I got close. Went to Germany and did like seven countries came together, but it was a challenge because most countries don't track their veteran population, and because of that, you can't get the people together to have this conversation because they're almost discarded, right? It's you've done your service, you were injured, and now we don't need you anymore. You're just you're going to be a burden on our system. And that taught me that some of these other countries that do track their communities, I saw their populations be more accepting and start having a different conversation around how they could use or employ, because they got it. This person was a high functioning individual, and just because they got hurt, they can still be high functioning. And they could begin to have the conversation with others saying, well, this person's high functioning, this other person is probably high functioning too. And so we begin to broaden that brush out. When you look at, from your lens of say a Maria Town, right, who's the president of AAPD, American Association for People with Disabilities right now, and the youth that are coming up, what is it that you see of them, pushing into these spaces to really help the generation after them?
That's a great question. I think it's interesting that they have higher expectations today because of what you and I have gone through, and that having a civil rights bill, a law that gives them a fallback position of at least a safety net, is really a positive issue. But I think they're learning to embrace their disability and disability identity in a much better way. And I think what you and I do every day, and you more than even I do, you're out there talking to young people with disabilities. We have our school, we do have influences, but I think it's about them accepting and being proud of who they are. And like to their very heart, are you okay with who you are? We have a program where we talk with our students about how are you feeling, and how is it if someone treats you badly? How do you react to it? How are you upset? Do you go inward or do you go outward? You're not going to beat up anybody, and I don't want you to beat up anybody. And I don't want you to use your power wheelchair as a tool, as a weapon. I don't want you to pin anybody against a wall, all right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about use your smarts to take control of that situation and really show who you are. So I think young people today have really learned that they have every right to be in the moment. They have every right to be present. They have civil rights to protect them in that endeavor, but that they have to be prepared themselves to contribute to the betterment of mankind. And if I can leave your audience with anything, it is that we all have something to give, and that it's arbitrary to just eliminate 20% of the population from your applicant pools and your promotion pools just because people happen to have a disability. I know people that are now realizing that people with Asperger's on the autism spectrum are just major assets to their corporations and are extraordinary in the technology field. It's all right that they're getting a chance to be able to prove that, even though they may have some difficulty in the socialization aspect of it. It's really about the work and what they can contribute, and it's about the assets that we have.
We all have something to give. Can't throw away 20% of your talent pool. 20% of your talent, you can't throw that away. You don't even know it's even out there. You're missing so much revenue. I want to, you mentioned something with, this kind of next generation. I think each generation has this challenge, but more so, I think, for people with disabilities. And we have an election that's coming up. And I'm not going to get into the politics of the election, but just in this pivotal moment, our country faces these challenges. It's tough for people with disabilities to just even get out and vote. So we rely on things like mail-in ballots. We rely on things that will make it easier for us to access our American right to do so. So have you experienced that in casting votes? And
I have come all the way from, now get this, I lived in Chicago for a while.
oh my gosh.
I was on Marka Bristow's board of directors of Access Living. I was her board chair for a while.
Yeah.
And Marka, of course, is passed away a year ago, and was just an extraordinary figure that we both knew very well and loved. She had a guy working for her named Michael Irwin, and Michael is a very funny, sarcastic guy. And he's a power wheelchair user, and he's part of this group called Jerry's Kids. And it's kind of to say the Muscular Dystrophy Association. You know, we're done with doing telethons.
Right.
Don't bring them back. So he worked on her staff, and he went to vote one time, and they gave him a ballot. They came out of the ballot place, which was not accessible to him and his wheelchair, and they gave him a ballot, and at the bottom it said, please check the box that says, I'm sorry, I have a disability and I can't vote here. And he said, that is disgusting. He said, it is not my fault that I can't vote in your polling place. It's you putting the polling place in an inaccessible place to me, and you are not to do this. And so he ended up starting a lawsuit that essentially got settled with the Board of Elections there. And, you know, Chicago's a tough place to vote. Vote early and vote often, as we know. But anyway, that's what people were doing. Sign a statement that says, I'm sorry, I can't get into your building. We don't apologize for our disabilities anymore. We're done with that. So back then, that was going on. Today, because of COVID and other things, I did the mail ballot. I have already voted. My ballot is in, and by God, I'm counting on it being counted.
I'll tell you what, my ballot's not even here yet.
Yikes!
It's not here yet.
That's
it used
really
to come a month ahead of time. I could vote, just get it done. It's not here yet.
You know, the person who's the president, who is in charge of the post office, who makes a lot of changes in the way the postal service works, is complicit in undermining the integrity of that entity. And that's a publicly funded entity. There is something basically wrong with what's going on. I'll try not to get any more political than that, but
my ballot's not here.
That's right. that says everything right there, John.
It's not here. So I think we have to, you know, we say, you know, we're in this democracy, and, you know, we want our voices to be heard. How then do we exercise? And the kind of last question, how then do we exercise our right? And how do we show up? I know when we look at things like Kemp and shutting down New York City with 50 chair users and you know, Judy out there making sure that traffic's not moving. Is that the way, or is it the other way?
I'd rather have John Register run for the United States Senate, run for governor, run for president of the United States. I'd like to see a candidate with a disability. I'd like to see hundreds of them going through the electoral process and becoming candidates and becoming elected and taking our issues along with all the other issues that society faces, because our issues are usually cross-cutting issues. Yeah. You know, what's good for us is usually good for everybody. Absolutely, the solution for us is a pluralistic solution. So if we make our transportation systems accessible for us, they're going to be accessible for everybody. If they do that, if they just look at life in a pluralistic way. So if we have to get elected and be the candidates, then John, you got to run for president, and you got to run for governor, you got to run for senator. There might even be a chance for a write-in this year.
I don't want to be written in on it. Don't write me. You got the choices out there. Make your choice. Make your choice. Choose wise.
But we do need candidates.
We do need candidates for sure. Well, I've just really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything I missed? How do people get a hold of you, just to make sure that that we are pushing you out and promoting what you do at Viscardi and other things you're involved with?
I can be reached at if you go to www.viscardi.center, that's VISCARDI Center, CENTR.org, you can reach us online there, and you can get to our website, and you can send me a message there. And we would love to help and talk to anybody that needs help. But I just want to say thank you for what you do. And you don't know really the impact that you're having by doing these live shows and talking to people with disabilities about their lives. And you yourself are just an awesome guy. So I just want to say thanks, John, for what you're doing.
So likewise, I really do appreciate it. Well, everybody, oh my gosh, that's my buddy right there, John D. Kemp, Esquire. He is doctor now, Dr. John Kemp, got that honorary doctor degree, Washburn University. We really appreciate him being on the show. So what we have coming up next week is, well, go back and watch the other show with Sharifa Yatim, talking about autism spectrum. Re-watch this show. I'm going to post both of them, pin them to the top of the LinkedIn, and we make sure that you're doing it. I'll change all the titles and everything up in the Facebook group as well as on YouTube. So we want to make sure that you're pushing that out to your audience. Start following, start sharing. This is great conversation. We're all this month with National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We want to make sure that we are forecasting and elevating the voice of those living with disabilities and showing why it's important to hire, retain, and promote these individuals, because there's extreme value, as John was talking to us about today. So what's coming up in here? We have Veterans in Business next week. I'll be out in San Diego for just a few days. I'm trying all these little hybrid things, y'all, seeing what the temperature is like. It's like the raven going out from the ark and then the dove going out from the ark, and the dove never came back. So where are we as far as having conferences again? I think we are, coming up, and maybe there's some hybrids that are happening. We'll see. I'll give you a report on that next week. We had, again, I said Sharif was on. Next week also, I have a lot of other virtual presentations that we've been doing all along. And we're really having these conversations around fear. Because as John was saying, as Sharif was saying earlier, a lot of times it's fear that holds us back. And it's not really, once we understand that, it's the release is, are we going to release from the fears of other individuals that hold a different mindset and aren't courageous to jump with us to another thought process? So think about that for the week as we come ahead. If you want to join our Facebook group, we're having amazing conversations. Always join us at www.facebook.com/groups with an S/amputate fear, and we'll let you in that group. And we're just having great dialogues, great discussions. I'll probably be in there live for a few minutes tomorrow as well. And we'll have all these will be tagged in the units section on that. So you can actually come back and see all these interviews in one location. So that's it. That's our show for today. We are always sharing with you that you are the inspirations. Inspirations are the catalyst to motivation. Motivation in turn causes actions. Actions therefore lead us to transformational results. And those results, they re-inspire us or allow other people who are watching the process actually to catch the vision. So it's go forth, inspire your world, because go is your command, forth is your direction, inspire, that's your vocation. This is personal to you. It's your work. You have to do it. And then world is your sphere of influence. Go forth, inspire your world, everybody. We'll see you back here next week. I think we got another time. We're going to go at 10:12 next week because I have a conflict. So 10:12 next week, set your calendar, and then we'll be back at our normal time after that at 3:12. But 10:12 Eastern time, 10:12 Mountain time next week. And we have, I believe, Reggie Showers, amputee, motorcycle, boom, he's awesome. And then Mona Patel, hopefully we get her on as well. Mona, of course, one of the top CNN heroes for the work that she does at the San Antonio Amputee Foundation. All right, we'll talk to y'all later. God bless everybody, and good afternoon. Bye-bye.